Hello, welcome to Sunday School at Lexington Baptist. I'm Dan Williams, and this is our study of Numbers. It's called Bamidbar in the wilderness in Hebrew, and we're chapter 33. All right, Numbers 33. Many of you have taken long journeys, trips, maybe on a cruise. Sometimes some people I know, a man has taken like a 2 month cruise. I don't know of anybody that took a 40-year journey, not knowing exactly where they were going. This is what the children of Israel did. And, when you're planning a trip, it's kind of fun to look at the itinerary, all the places you're going to stop. But the children of Israel didn't have that luxury. They didn't know where they were going from one place to the next. They were led by a pillar of fire at night and a pillar of cloud by day. But this is the record that Moses kept of all the places where they did encamp. And so we're going to be looking in chapter 33 at all of the stops they made. They made 42 stops along their journey to get to the promised land. And we're only going to look at 23 of those stops today. So these are the journeys of the children of Israel that went forth out of the land of Egypt uh, with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings out according to their journeys by the commandment of Yahweh. And these are the journeys according to their goings out. First of all, they departed from Ramesses. That's the Egyptian city. In the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, that's the Hebrew calendar way, is just to call the months the original Hebrew calendar, what we call the Zadok calendar. The months are just numbered. First month, second month. They don't have a name like Nisan. That's a Babylonian name, or Tishri. Um, and they call the days just by numbers. The seventh day is the Sabbath day. This talks about the 15th day of the first month. Um, and so this is the day after the 14th day of the first month, which was Passover, when the children of Israel were instructed to sacrifice a lamb, put the blood over the doorposts of their homes. It was the 10th plague, and death was going to pass over the homes that were marked by the blood. Otherwise, the firstborn of each house was going to die. And so that's what happened. And the Egyptians, they're all bearing their firstborn while the Israelites are hightailing it out of there. And it just made me think, wonder if the Egyptians also had a practice of burying their dead within 24 hours of death. That's really a Jewish tradition and way. Of course, it may just simply be because, there's no refrigeration or morgues back then, and they had a lot of dead bodies that they need to get in the ground, or else it was going to be a great stench and who knows, disease and all that kind of thing. But Isaiah 19:1 says, "This message came to me concerning Egypt. Look, Yahweh is advancing against Egypt, riding on a swift cloud. The idols of Egypt tremble. The hearts of the Egyptians melt with fear." And that's what happened when this 10th plague hit Egypt. So after leaving Egypt, how many stops did the Hebrews make before reaching the promised land? Well, I already said that. It gave it away to you. It's 42 stops. Stop number one is a place called, believe it or not, this is the word Sukkot, not Sukkoth. It's Sukkot. And what is a Sukkot is just plural for sukkah. What is a sukkah? A sukkah is just a tent. A Sukkot means tabernacles, plural. A sukkah is singular. It's a tent, or you can call it a tabernacle or booth. That's why there's the Feast of Booths or Feast of Tabernacles. This is where the children of Israel first retrieved the bones of Joseph to take to Canaan, the promised land. Once again, some of us may dwell in tents, fleeing the Antichrist, and one day he will come and tabernacle with us in person. It's thought that this place called Sukkot, it was named that because it was kind of on the edge of, say, civilization before they go out in the wilderness. It was a trade route, and it was a place, they didn't have a lot of Days Inn or Motel 6 around there. So it was a place where people would camp a lot, and there were probably a lot of leftover boards and parts of of little structures and booths and tents and fabric and those kinds of things that made sense for them to go there immediately when they came out of Egypt, get there as quickly as they could, and spend the night there, gather up all those little booths and things that they could take with them, because there's like several million, 1.5 to 2.5 million of these Hebrews coming out of Egypt. Before their first stop, they left from Ramesses, which means child of the sun. We all grew up worshiping on Sunday. Not that we were worshiping the sun, but by worshiping on Sunday rather than the Sabbath day, we really were not obeying the fourth commandment. And we were identifying with the people, or the very least, at the very least, carrying on a man-made tradition of the people who, from Constantine's time, that was like 350 AD, were commanded to worship on the venerable day of the sun, according to his edict, and not, it was against the law. We couldn't worship on the same day as the, quote, filthy Jews, Constantine's words. And since then, we've inherited, we said, well, Jesus was discovered to be risen from the dead on the first day of the week, so let's just commemorate that. We kind of left behind things that had to do. We said, oh, well, those are Jewish things: Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, and all the Feast of Tabernacles. All these things that we said, well, they're Jewish things. No, they're not feasts of the Jews. They're, God says, read it in the Torah. He says, God says, these are my feasts. They shall be kept throughout your generations forever. So we who are spiritual Israel, we are grafted into the people of the covenant. Galatians 3:29. That's why we should heed these words and obey them. Just as the Israelites had to leave the homes and lives they had built in Egypt, they were there for 250 years. Um, and they turned into slavery probably the last 100, 150 years of their existence there. We too must leave behind and not look back, as Lot's wife did, longingly at the pagan things we have left behind. Here's a map showing the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were given that land, Ramesses, great city up here, and so they left. They were gathered from all here, and they didn't go that far. They went to Sukkot, and they're just this is the Gulf of Suez, and of course the man-made Suez Canal goes right through there. So stop number 2 is Etham. And they departed from Sukkot and pitched in Etham, which is in the edge of the wilderness. So if Sukkot, this map, nobody knows exactly where all these places are, and the person who did this little route, there's obviously a lot of twists and turns that are not there. But the important thing, I chose this because it shows their destination as being Mount Sinai here. Now, 50 years ago and beyond, the traditional site of Mount Sinai was in the Sinai Peninsula, somewhere around here. But through some discovery and some research, it's been largely accepted and determined that Mount Sinai is really, it's a mountain called Jabal al-Lawz, L-A-W-Z, here in Saudi Arabia. And of course, the New Testament even says, though, makes a reference to Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia. So I'm not sure how it really ever got traditionally over here. That's the way traditions go. But it says they departed from Sukkot, which was either here or down here, somewhere around here, and pitched in Etham, which is the edge of the wilderness. So that was probably somewhere not too far away from Sukkot, I guess. But Etham means with them, means plowshare. This is where people may compromise and not make a clean break from the world or their past. A plow, what does a plow do? It breaks up the hard ground so seeds can grow in the fertile soil. Once committed to your journey with Yahusha, Jesus, put your hand to the plow and don't look back. So this first stop being plowshare could be a very defining moment for the people. It was like, okay, if anybody doesn't want to go with us out into the wilderness, we're on the edge of it. It's not too late. You can go back, and maybe they'll accept you back. You can still be a slave. Maybe they won't kill you, but they're very disgruntled at us Israelites right now because the firstborn are all dead, and they want to blame our God. That's why a lot of the Egyptians said, "Well, your God must be the right God. Can we go with you?" So they had a lot of Egyptians that sojourned with them. They removed from Etham and turned again into Pihahirot, which is before Baal Zephon, which means kind of along the border, this other place. And they pitched before Migdol. Where are all these places? If looking at archaeology and some studies, there's been some belief that it's in this area, and particularly this Pihahirot is an outcrop. Now, what is this word? This is near where Pharaoh's army thought they were going to corner the Israelites at the Red Sea. This place is a compound word. Pe is it's the Hebrew word for mouth. Ha means the. Wrath is hirot, mouth of the wrath. Wow. As a believer, we must battle the wrath of those who will speak evil lies about us. Words are very dangerous things. In Revelation 12, the serpent unleashes wrath against the woman in the wilderness. That would be the believers. Pharaoh represents the serpent unleashing his wrath on the children of in the wilderness. And the serpent thought he had them all cornered, was going to wipe them all out right here at this spot. In both Revelation and in Numbers, Yah's people are victorious, however. And so a little closer scene here. And they departed from before Pihahirot and passed through the midst of the sea. Now, in this count in Numbers, you say, wait a minute, you got to do some explaining here on that. These little 6 words here, 7 words, I don't use that. It's a lot more passing through the midst of the Red Sea. What happened here? What did God tell them to do? What happened to the Egyptian army here? Um, but we're not going to get into detail about this particular crossing, but I want to show you this. This is Google Maps picture. It's called Nuweiba Beach in Egypt, and it's this little outcrop. It's about 3 miles, and it said it could hold 2 or 3 million people. But what's interesting also is this little gorge that is carved out through the mountains, and this is where it's believed the children of Israel came through here and followed this path. Didn't know what was going to be at the end of it, but they get out here, and their hearts must have fallen because Pharaoh's army is coming in right behind them. They've got them cornered. There's no escape. So what were they going to do? They were going to cross the Red Sea here in the Gulf of Aqaba. Interesting that there so happens to be a natural land bridge underneath the waters at this crossing point. And there's been divers have had um, discoveries of archaeological finds of, say, like chariot wheels, of the same number of spokes that match that period of Egypt. And so a lot of evidence, and there's some historical markers that have been found on both sides of this as well, the ancient markers. So they go from crossing the Red Sea and they go to a place called Marah, which means bitter waters, Marar. The people really began to murmur and complain. It may be that the bitter waters were used to eradicate parasites from their bodies to strengthen them for the journey ahead. Truth is sometimes a bitter pill to swallow, and some rebel, murmur, and complain. Don't let bitterness take root in you, for it will produce some ugly fruit. Stop number 5 is Elam. And in Elam, there were 12 fountains of water, 60 and 10 palm trees. Well, a score is 20. 3 times 20 is 60, and 10. There's 70 palm trees. That's what it says. There were 12 springs and 70 date palms here. Elim is a proper name for a place in the desert. It is the plural form of the word Aiel, which means palm tree. It also can mean their leader, and more specifically, righteous leader. Elim is where each person had to drink from one of the 12 streams. This is symbolic of how the 12 gates to the New Jerusalem will be named for each of the 12 tribes. The wood that Moses threw into the bitter water to make it sweet represents the cross and the change that Messiah brings into our lives. You know, we sing about every day with Jesus is what? Sweeter than the day before. The cross made possible sweetness. And so there's the implication there, looking ahead. We're finding Jesus in the Old Testament. It all is going to point to the Messiah in one way or another. And they removed from Elim and encamped by the Red Sea. Um, you know, from these maps and wordings, encamped by the Red Sea, translation, does it mean along or near or close to? Um, and it doesn't give the name of the place. But the sixth stop of Israel is seen in 10 to 11. It's called the Red Sea. Now, in Hebrew, this is Yam Suf. Yam is the Hebrew word for sea. Suf, the adjective, always follows the noun. Suf means reeds. And so it's the sea of the reed, but it can also read. This word can mean end, sea of the end. So maybe they encamped by the end of the Red Sea, which would be here at the Gulf of Aqaba somewhere. We must take up our execution stake and follow Yeshua. Those who have tasted and turn away from their deliverance will come to a terrible end. It's hard to imagine how there can be people who taste of salvation and then at some point reject it. We traditionally have used that little phrase, well, faith that fizzles had a flaw from the first, meaning that if someone looked like they received their forgiveness from the Lord and walking with the Lord and getting involved with His work, and then 10 years later, where they rejected all, they got over that. They're, you know, we would say, well, something was wrong from the first, because how could it be possible that anybody who would truly taste of salvation in a personal relationship with the Father would ever dream of walking away from it? Stop number 7 is the wilderness, and this I used to think this was the wilderness of sin. Oh, it's where they're going to be tempted. It's wilderness of sin. Well, it's not really sin in that meaning of that English word. It's pronounced seen. Actually, modern Hebrew, seen is the name of China, um, but they go to the wilderness of Sin. And what is there? Sin means uninhabited land. This is where Yahweh provided the manna for the people. The end of days will be full of supernatural provision. We must we must learn to feed on what He provides for our spiritual health and well-being. We illustrate this in the physical by keeping our vessels, our bodies, as healthy vessels of honor. But while Yahweh will provide supernaturally, we should not totally depend on this for our life today or in the future. You know, remember that God gave Joseph wisdom and advanced knowledge to start storing up for famine. And it's just prudent, it's wise for any of us to have a store of supplies for what could possibly happen, not just with an economic failure of the dollar or a natural disaster like hurricane or tornado, but preparing for what may come in the big picture if we're going to be again on a second greater exodus, which there are a lot of prophecies that speak about that happening in the end, that this will be repeated, a a gathering together from all four corners of the earth and making a journey back to the land. Wow. Don't know what that's going to be like, but I want to be prepared. Yahweh wants us to live in obedience to His word, which means that we are living blessing to blessing. As we obey Torah and prepare for the days ahead, Yahweh will provide the blessings and the miracles. Stop number 8. This is Dofka, and it sounds German. And they took their journey out of the wilderness of Sin and encamped in Dofka. A Dofka is a knocking. Where else in Scripture do we hear the word or see the word knocking? About the only place everybody in the class could think of. The only one I can think of is Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I'll fellowship with him and he with me. Number 9 is, I'm going to pronounce this alush. Accent's always on the second syllable. It looks like alash. It comes from This is a lush is the future tense of the word lush. I'm going to pronounce it lush rather than lush. But that word means to need. Ani alush lechem. I will need the bread. Or bread. It would be ha lechem if it was the bread. Ani is I. I, when this is the future tense, will need bread. Lechem. Remember, Jesus is the lechem of life. He was born in Beit Lechem, Bethlehem. He's the bread of life. What is kneading? It's working into or massaging uh, into. Uh, we need to massage His word into our lives. I remember Rick Fisher was our former pastor. First time I heard a preacher using I'm going to need to massage this passage. Um, and it's a good illustration how we need to let this be worked into our lives sometimes, to meditate on it and knead it into our lives. Rephidim, number 10. And they removed from Alush and encamped in Rephidim where there was no water for the people to drink. Well, they filled up on those springs just a while back, but now they're running out of water again. But that's this Rephidim, it means a rest or staying place. So what happened here? Two things happened here. This is where Moses struck the rock and the water came. And another evidence, a place called Split Rock, and it's a place near Mount Sinai that looks to be like this could possibly be where Moses struck the rock and the water came out. But also what happened here is where they had to fight a battle with the Amalekites, and this is where Aaron and Hur held Moses' hands up so the Israelites would prevail. His arms got tired, and if he dropped his arms, the Amalekites would start winning. As long as his hands were held up, the Israelis would be winning. Isaiah 35 probably took this verse, wrote this based on that experience that Moses had. Strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way. So they had to set Moses on a rock. We need to hold each other up and hold each other accountable. That's what all this is about, teaching and learning, teaching and learning. Number 11, the wilderness of Sinai. Now they're getting to Mount Sinai, and Mount Horeb is right near that. And this is where God did some amazing things. There, they departed from Rephidim and pitched in the wilderness of Sinai. The 11th camp, where they received the Torah at Mount Sinai. Here is where Yahweh wedded himself to his people to be like a husband to them. Here's where the people said, I do. He gave them the Torah, the instructions, and said, I will be your God, you will be my people. Here's my law. If you enter into this covenant with me, and the people said, all that he said we will do. So he said, I will be like a husband to them. And this is where this analogy with Hosea illustrates this. Hosea was told to marry an unfaithful wife. Well, God says, well, I know how you feel. This is how Israel is to me. Israel became very unfaithful, and it led them into all kind of disasters and pitfalls. But God is like the hound of heaven, and he seeks after his bride, his the one that he has wedded himself to. And actually, the analogy goes further because at some point you see that God says, I gave her a certificate of divorce. I divorced myself from disobedient Israel. But he wants to woo his children back to him, and that's why he sent his son to become the sacrificial lamb. Stop number 12 is a big long word. Kibrota ta'ava. And they removed from the desert and pitched at this long word. This large word means graves of longing or graves of lust. What happened here? Our spiritual journey certainly includes a death to lustful desires. We must choose to delight in Yahweh and put to death fleshly urges that are contrary to the word. But here's where those who died, some of them died in that battle with the Amalekites, and this is where they were buried. Then they went to Hazarot. They departed and camped in Hazarot. This word means enclosure or settlement. From just these words, we can draw that an enclosure, well, that's akin to a sheepfold. The Lord is my shepherd, and if we're going to be like sheep, we need to be in that enclosure, in that sheepfold. But you could, if you think of the definition being settlement, there can be some pitfalls there. We are not to allow ourselves to become too settled in this world of comfort. Don't get complacent because we're all settled in the sheepfold. We need to be always burdened for the lost, praying for the lost, saying, Father, here am I, send me. 14, they departed from Hazerat and pitched in Ritma. The word heath, or I think that's going to be heath, or heth, which is a shrubland, uncultivated, poor soil and drainage. It's a place where heather, I guess you say heather rather than heather, so it's kind of a weed. We must not let weeds be cultivated into our souls. Amos says it's time to till the soil of our hearts. Get the weeds out. Don't be asleep to the truth, or the enemy will sow darnel in us, which is a fake compromise and will suck the life out of you. Darnel is something that can grow in a wheat field, but it's really more of a weed. The thing about darnel, it's called beaded darnel. It can look a lot like wheat, except when the wheat berries on true wheat get strong and start growing, the weight of them cause that wheat stalk to bow, to bend. The darnel, symbolizing pride, it's the stalk is strong and it's just a weed, and the berries aren't that heavy, and so it stands upright. It'll stand out amongst the wheat when the fruit has become evident. Stop number 15. They departed from Ritma and went to Rimon Perez. Rimon is the Hebrew word for pomegranate, a Rimon. This fruit is packed full of seeds. So what does it represent? Pomegranates were all along the bottom of the priest's garment. You know, there's a bell, a pomegranate, a bell, a pomegranate. It symbolized that the priest's role was to produce more life in others. We're to be like seed sowers, taking the word of the Father, scattering the seeds. Yahusha says we are to bear much fruit. 16, and they departed from Ramon Perez and pitched in, we say Libna. Well, that Vav, it's going to be a Vav that gets sometimes pronounced a bait as a B or a V. So in this case, it's going to be, what's the bait letter that gets pronounced a B or a V sound? I'm going to say that it would really have been pronounced Livna. The nation comes to a town called Livna or Levan, Levan, along their way. See, the word means whiteness. The Hebrew, modern Hebrew word for white is Lavan. Lavan, not Laban or Laban. It means whiteness. Shakor is black. Levan is white. This is a white land in the west and is known to be a center of trading and harvesting of the essential oil of frankincense. Well, we know what that points to. Frankincense is an aromatic resin that can be obtained by the boswellia tree. The bark is tapped and the resin bleeds the oil and then hardens into little rock tears. And then when you burn it, it sets off this great fragrance. 17, they removed from Livnah and pitched in Risa. It's a fortified city, but the name Risa is from the word means roost or ruin. So they came across what was a fortified area, but it might have been in ruins. What did it look like when they got there? Perhaps it was in ruins. When you come across ruins, well, let it be a reminder to you as a description of what you've left behind. We all have ruins of our past. We don't want to go and build those things back up because they were, if we're following Yahusha, we let those things die away. We let those things just rot. And we don't want to go back there. We don't want to rebuild them up. So let it be a reminder of what you've left behind. Number 18, they journeyed from Risa, went to Kehilata. From Kehilat, which means Kehilat, that means assembly or congregation. That's kind of the Hebrew word that we say the church. The church in the wilderness was the Kehilat. I've been to Kehilat HaCarmel. That means the church at the assembly on Mount Carmel. It's a congregation or assembly. We are part of a people group as believers. We need each other. Forsake not the assembling of yourselves together. We are a Kehilat. 19, and they went from there and pitched in Shapher. What does this mean? Also known as Mountain of Beauty. The beauty that should emanate from our lives is evidence that we have been to the mountain of Yah and have come into a relationship with his son. A lot of times we use all the sensory. People ought to hear the word from us. They ought to see Jesus in us, and they ought to smell the aroma of the love of God emanating from us. Number 20, they removed from Mount Shapher and encamped in Haradah. This means place of departure or fear. This is symbolic of how we must depart from our fear. Um, our fear of what? Our fear of man, our fear of circumstances. This world has a lot of things that would cause us to fear, but we fear not, and we only fear Yahweh. So let us, as we go through our journey, there may be some things that come up that would cause us to be fearful. You know, these children of Israel, we're about halfway through the journey. They're going to, next week, we'll get into where they get up to, where they're afraid that there are giants in the land. They're going to kill them. And so they become fearful. No, we are not to be fearful. 21. And they removed from Haradah and pitched in Machelot. This was near Moab, we say Moab, and was actually a place dedicated to Molech. This is the Moabites worship Molech. It was a very evil, demonic, false god that they would sacrifice their children to Molech. Why would Yahweh allow his people to camp in such a demonic place? This could have been a fearful place, surrounded by a lot of evil and darkness. This station simply demonstrates that we are to be in the world, but not of the world. As the days grow darker, our light should shine brighter. The people of Moab and those living near us today need to see a living example of Yahweh's power. 22, and they removed from Machelot and encamped at Tahat. This word means station, but it also means below or beneath, referring to a lowly state. Maybe it could refer to humility. We must remain humble all along our journey. 23, this is the last stop for this week. And they departed from Tahat and pitched in Terah. Now, I believe that should be Terah. And maybe this place was named after Terah, who was Abraham's father. And this was a town named after Abraham's father. The word means old fool or wild goat. Now, what way could that, is that very demeaning to Abraham's father? Well, actually, Abraham's father was not a godly man most of his life. The name Terah can mean station or delay. Terah, Abraham's father, delayed in his obedience. See, he was an idol maker under Nimrod in Babylon, but he delayed obedience. But delayed obedience is disobedience. So he ended up going with his son, Abram, when they left the land of Ur of the Chaldees and went to Haran up in the north. Although Terah, hopefully, he left off worshiping idols and worshiped the one true God, but he, maybe because of his age, he did not proceed with Abraham to go into the promised land. And this is where we're going to leave the journey this week. And I thought of this song I wrote some years ago of how much the people had to trust God out there in the wilderness and how much we need to trust him day by day with every obstacle that comes up. And this is a song called You Are the God of Israel.
You are the God of Israel. Trusting you I cannot fail. Even in my darkest night, I'm safe within your light. I trust you, God of Israel. You are the God of Israel. Trusting you I cannot fail. Even in my darkest night, I'm safe within your light. I trust you, God of Israel. Abraham believed God would provide. Isaac knew he owed to God his life. Jacob wrestled through the night for a blessing he would find. I trust you, God of Israel. You are the God of Israel. Trusting you I cannot fail. When the tempter comes to strike, your holy word will help me fight. I trust you, God of Israel. Joseph did not fall for Satan's schemes. He proved that sometimes God speaks in our dreams. And Moses knew what had to be when to set God's people free. I trust you, God of Israel. You are the God of Israel. Trusting you I cannot fail. When I can't see left or right, I will not fear, for you're my light. I trust you, God of Israel. Daniel would not compromise his faith. King David failed, but God restored his ways. Yeshua came his life to give, rose again so I might live. By trusting you, O God of Israel. You are the God of Israel. Trusting you I cannot fail. Even in my darkest night, I am safe within your light. I trust you, God of Israel. I trust you, God of Israel. I trust you, God of Israel.